it's duplicated down where it's improper.
So where is it now?
You've got it right after diameter breast height, it says dimensional requirements. And then if you go down where it would be in the proper alphabetical order,
Oh, yeah, right in the middle of the page.
Oh, yeah.
it's the exact same thing, I believe. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a single word different.
Duplicate.
One of those things that must have slipped through at some point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you know what? I see how DVH got in there. Cause it, yeah, yeah. They need to be alphabetized properly. Okay. The decks, dedication.
Now, under deck, it shall not have a roof, canopy, or awning.
Even, you know, temporary awnings that
Yeah.
you can roll down. Also,
What?
primarily wood, I thought a lot of decks now were being built with synthetic materials,
Oh, yeah.
what do you call it, reused plastic kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Why don't we just take that line out? It shall not be.
Things
should be
have
constructed
changed.
Should construct with suitable materials or something, or is that too wishy-washy language? Or generally accepted materials or some other word, because
Well, you could say constructed primarily of wood or.
other appropriate materials, or is that too vague?
Use the industry standard.
I know.
What happens if we just take it out? You're gonna build a deck, what are you gonna build?
Well, it's gotta be built to building code anyway, right?
Decks are being made out of composite now, so you could say wood or composite.
That covers a lot. Composite.
As long as you have something that expands it beyond wood, because there's quite a few.
Wood or composite.
Now, the question is, did they bother to add a patio down below?
Hang on a second.
I'm checking.
And it shall not be enclosed. It shall not have a roof.
I think you could leave, it shall not have a roof, but I think you ought to take off the canopy or awning. I mean, I've got
Yeah.
one of those fold-out awnings that comes out over my deck.
I know a lot of people do because they, and especially they advertise it now because they're so interested in making sure people don't get sunburned. So
Yeah.
Unless there's some legal reason you can't do it,
I think the
I
roof
think
part is okay, but the
People are
canopy
just
and
trying to
awning
be
part's a
real
little
picky
sketchy.
about not being.
It really doesn't play into shoreland because when you're talking shoreland, a deck is
The
included.
deck is what they're measuring.
Yeah, they measure from the deck out to the water.
Yep.
May contain railings with screen. That's kind of interesting. So you can't have a roof, but you can have railings and screening.
I don't understand why you can't have a roof on the deck.
How do you put up the screen?
Well, that would be a
without
porch. What is the definition of a porch?
Yeah, but if you got a,
Porch has a roof,
Yeah.
and it is not always fully enclosed, but maybe.
Yeah, I would agree that a porch, once you put a roof over it, you got a porch going on. It's not a deck anymore.
a closed-in deck though, I've seen them advertised.
Right, then it becomes a porch.
Then it becomes a porch. The second you put the roof on, it's a porch.
But if you have a closed-in deck for the summer, which means that you put like a screening and awning device over it that you take down, then it's temporary and it's not a porch, it's a deck.
I think so.
Okay, it may contain a railing, okay. All right, I think the rest of it's fine. All right, keep going. We spent quite a bit of time talking about development before. I remember that.
I think I read this one earlier today, and I didn't see anything wrong with
Right.
it. I think it covers just about,
Yeah.
All right, keep flying, disability.
It's all right.
Okay, let's go ahead and just jump forward to dwelling. So do we want to get rid of dwelling altogether?
Yeah, put the, right there where it says dwelling, I'd see residential.
Yeah, just do that placeholder kind of thing.
yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Well,
So
see
you're not
residence.
eliminating it, you're just saying C,
Residential.
yeah, C residential.
And then we need to make sure under residential,
We cover what we want to cover.
yeah, they cover the same items.
That covers you in case you miss the dwelling reference.
Mhm. See residence or residential. And or residential. The plural.
We put that in each definition through F?
No, I just take it
No, just
off.
under the word dwelling, and then we gotta look at this stuff here and see, and make it fit in residential.
Just basically word the beginning of them, move them all down into residential. Anything that isn't already there.
And then it's covered, and it's not duplicated, and it's not confusing. Okay,
Is camp in a different area?
well, there's no,
Camp is a dwelling, or residential is a residence.
right, well, we don't wanna, camp is a slang term used by people when they go to camp. It's not a,
Yeah, my wife is from Oregon and she was just flabbergasted with the word camp because to them, out there, camp means you're in a tent,
yeah, I know.
period.
So,
It's a cottage, it's not a camp, it's a
right, and
cottage.
if we start to try to define camp separately than the campgrounds, it'll really muck things up.
Well, I think somewhere in the ordinance, I think we've run into problems with definitions of structures.
We'll deal with that when we get structures or we'll find them in the ordinance.
Okay, elevated building. I mean, I think this is straight out of the flood hazard stuff, so that's,
Yeah, I don't think we can do anything to that or elevations.
if you could just check that and current that for us, it'd be great. That FEMA reference. Emergency operations. I mean, I think that's okay. Essential services, I think that's probably good.
What a dwelling means, that's probably definition's probably taken right through.
Yeah.
Follow left, right? I gotta believe everything under the flood plan.
Came under the flood, federal flood stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we can touch any of that, has anything that has flood on it.
right through to foundation.
Yep. That's on page 18.7.
18.7.
You think we're okay with road frontage? Frontage, comma, road,
Yeah,
frontage, comma, shore.
yeah, it's just standard definitions.
Functionally dependent water uses. Yeah, I remember having quite a discussion about that too, it's back in time.
I remember what you.
I think a lot of these definitions are probably just pulled from the model ordinance and stuff that, in some cases, just.
I think the functionally dependent water uses might have a lot to do with the shoreline zoning ordinance. Okay, this is height of the structure. We dealt with height before.
Okay, you went all the way down through G,
Oh yeah, I did.
okay. Well, actually, I don't see anything wrong with everything down to there with somebody else.
So. Building height. Okay, so actually now that I look at this height of a structure, so this is someplace where we might want to consolidate things, because this has building height for purposes of dimensional requirements for the growth management area. That's in 18.2. And then on this other page, we have height of the structure. So, and this might be different than the other one, because this height of structure,
This measured from the downhill side up the other, and that was,
right,
that's what was changed supposedly in the shoreline, right? To the outside.
right, but, and I don't understand. I mean, there's probably gonna be a third definition, because if I was a betting person, I would look at this height of a building height for purposes of the other thing, the GPA thing. And then we have this height, and I bet you that none of them match the shoreline zoning height standard. Because there's like 3 different possible ways of doing it. So we don't have to decide like right now, but I think I'm gonna make it as a to-do item is to look at this. So you're gonna look at the shoreline zoning, you already agreed you're gonna do that, right?
Yeah.
So if you can try to come up with a definition for height that's consistent for all the different things that we're gonna measure. So I don't think it does any benefit for us to use all these different heights. I mean, unless the shoreline zoning height is so restrictive that it can't be used anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like it would be ridiculous to use it on, you know, your property, for example. I don't know, because I don't know what the definition is under the shoreline zoning ordinance right now.
Right.
But if it's so draconian that it would be not reasonable to use it on a non-shoreline parcel, then we probably need to have 2 definitions. But if not, I'd like to have all the height things under one. So historic site,
I want to ask about this.
go ahead.
Doesn't an actual historic site actually have a designation by the Historical Society or whoever they are?
I think that's why it says the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966.
So it isn't what one person thinks is a historic site.
Right, that's kind of what I was joking about earlier with the stone wall thing that Dave pointed out. You know, if it's a designated historic.
There's a process.
Right.
And it's either imposed by the government, or in some cases you can apply.
For example, I think the community center up the road here in Bennington,
It comes out, yeah.
that was applied for and done as a historic site.
So it's the Clifton town office, the old town office.
The old town office, same thing,
And the town hall, they're both now on the historic.
register,
It was belonged to the Historical Society, and they got it, put on.
we've got it registered. So we have a couple of different places that are registered now.
Williams Lumber Yard was not.
No. If not, somebody's in gross violation.
Okay.
Home business. This is what we talked about a little bit.
This would be pretty broad. I mean, that could,
That's what we were trying to do, because a lot of people work out of their houses and we didn't want to make them illegally working out of their houses.
or if they grow veggies in the garden, does that constitute a home business?
They sell
They sell them, right? They raise chickens, sell eggs, that's home business.
them, home business.
You know, the one thing,
Except for the date of adoption of the ordinance, we probably actually have to go back to that.
that's the one part. So if you now want to have a home business, you can't run it out of an accessory structure on your property, because It's after the date of the adoption of this ordinance?
Yeah, you gotta go to
Trying
code enforcement
grandfather,
permit.
I mean, it's what they're trying to do.
I don't think, see how you can define it any other way than it already is.
Well, I'm not sure if you want to put that, the date of adoption of this ordinance still in there.
Yeah,
What you're pretty much saying is if you had a home business that you ran out of your garage before the ordinance was,
It's okay.
it's
Grandfather,
okay,
Yeah.
but after that, you gotta run it out of your house.
I know, what we had talked about, we could go back and revisit this, okay, when we talk about what's allowed and what's not allowed, but at the time, there was a thought that we should be regulating home businesses at the time, okay, and then we talked about, not wanting, and that's how we had the code enforcement officer, that's how we had the level 1 and level 2 type of thing, or whatever, because, some people were concerned about the amount of traffic that is prevalent at some home
Right, but
businesses.
we actually allowed home businesses, when we get to that part,
But
we
you have,
allow them in accessory structures, but here, you're saying you can't do it.
Yeah.
well, that's like a home business, okay, well, maybe we need to adjust this, but that's how we get into home business too, and you gotta see the code enforcement officer to do it. The point, I think, with this one was that if you were doing it before the ordinance,
Your grandfather.
your grandfather, but if you do it after the ordinance, you just have to come get a permit from the code enforcement officer.
You could put in there a retroactive clause.
You could, but I mean, I'm just saying,
but I understand what he's saying is that this right here, we ought to take that line out because this ordinance has already been adopted.
well, no, what we really want to decide is, do we want to make it so that somebody has to get a permit to run out of an accessory structure?
So what, do you remember how?
They do anyway.
Ended up in the rest of the audience with John?
Well, I think it was matched up, I think it was all matched up at the time. So, okay, so what you gotta think of is, like our fellow down the road here who has all the lawnmowers, and we had a big to-do about that. I mean, that guy has his house, and then he set up his little garage next to it, and he started doing a fairly steady business with lawnmowers. He has like a lot of traffic in there in the summertime, because he's, he fixes. So if you set up so you have no oversight from the code enforcement officer, the point people were trying to make was you can create all kinds of traffic problems. And what we didn't want to do though was, we didn't want to make the guy come to a site plan. Like if you were in Brewer, for example, and you wanted to do that, you'd have to come in front of the planning board, you'd have to have a survey, a site plan, drainage, all that good
But we
stuff.
already handled that under non-residential uses. But what this is saying is that anybody that wants to start, technically, this right here means you can only run it out of your house.
You have to get a permit at that, do you?
Well, that's what a
You
home
still have
business
to get a
is. I
permit.
mean, then you get into a commercial business after that.
Well, yeah,
No,
but you
no, a
have,
lot of home businesses, I have more stuff stored in my garage than I have in my house. I couldn't put it in my house.
yeah, but if you have some guy that's a professional wider working out his home, does he have to get a permit?
Well, no, we didn't want to do that.
I mean, that's.
I have to go back and look at the matrix. We could take it out, I don't really care.
But that's home occupation. I'm only saying that one section that says, as of the date of adoption of this ordinance, that is,
Well, I see what you're saying. So you're just saying just get rid of that one phrase.
yes,
So which is conducted within or from dwelling unit by occupant of the dwelling unit. The use may also be conducted with an accessory structure, period.
period.
But don't we want, well, just for consideration, some level or threshold? I mean, someone who.
Well, you still have to get a permit for that level of business. That's written into, which section is it? I forget.
Right, okay, but now, okay, all right. That's why we wrote this in the first place. So a person who's been doing it all along, okay, for the past 20 years, are they gonna have to come get a permit now?
We've had them grandfathered right along, technically they'd be grandfathered.
Right, well, that was the purpose of that line. The grandfather.
To grandfather them, but somebody new can't use anything other than their house for a home business. That's saying can only be conducted with an accessory structure which existed as of the date. of
Okay, I
the-
see, this is a fine point here, and now that I'm starting to absorb what you're trying to tell me, okay?
So a neighbor could say, he started a business in his building, and it wasn't there.
What you're saying is we need to grandfather them, but you don't grandfather them in the definition, you grandfather them back in the ordinance wherever it talks about this type of business.
Yes,
Okay, that's what you're saying, got it.
Or you can just, if you're gonna leave part of that sentence in, if you're gonna let them do it in an accessory structure, just scratch off the end of the sentence.
Well, that's what we're gonna do, but if you wanna make sure that they're grandfathered so that they don't feel like they have to get a permit now, you should do it not in the definition of the type of use. You should do it in the part where it says you gotta get a permit. And it
yes.
just says, if you existed when this was, if you were doing this, when this ordinance was passed the first time back in 2009 or 8 or whatever year it was, then you don't have to get a permit.
Right. You see, technically, this definition, if you read the whole thing, the first line says basically you can do anything from
Right.
living your dwelling.
Now that I just had to figure out what you were trying to tell us, because I wanted to make sure they were grandfathered. Okay, but now I just see
Well,
that.
they're grandfathered anyway.
Right. Okay, I understand now. We'll take care of that in the other part.
But that one part of the sentence could
Right.
mean anybody that wants to run a new home,
Right, technically, now they wouldn't be able to do it at all.
well, they could, only if they could run it out of their house.
Right, no, I got you.
Words like premises or something like that, it gives a little wiggle room to it. Would that be-
Well, that's what Bruce is giving us. All Bruce I think was telling us was, and I think he's right, is that where, he's agreeing we need to grandfather him, I think we all agree on that. But where the grandfathering should occur is in the ordinance part, not in the definition of the
Okay.
use part.
I
I
agree.
think that's what it took me that whole time to figure out that's what he was telling me.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, I think we're good on the home occupation, because we're trying to enable some amount of employees in them too, without having to go through a hoop. Tell you what, why don't we just jump down to something, this residential thing, make sure we have that straightened out. Here are the residents.
Okay, well, first you want to stop at M. I think there's much on most of these. But under M where it says multi-unit residential, I think you should change the way that's listed here and say residential multi-unit.
Right.
So that basically when somebody's looking for residential, it'll all be in one block like it
Yes.
used to be for dwelling.
I had it lined right out, remember why?
Because it was covered under dwelling probably earlier, you were deciding that
Yeah.
go with that. I'd just like to see all the residential things done the way the dwelling one was in one spot,
Got it.
so people can find it easier.
Look at this residential dwelling unit.
Okay, and then the same thing under planned residence. So that should be residence, comma, planned.
Yeah, that would, I think, would make more sense.
Maybe in the definition of residence, we put in parentheses after that dwelling.
Okay, hang on a second. Under, well, we have porch there, all right. So then, it says principal structure, should it say structure, comma, principal? Or should we just get rid of it? No, I think we need it probably,
Yeah, I think we need it.
but we should say structure, common principle, right?
No, the fact that you're putting the comma in other places indicates that that word may appear before. At least that's always
Yeah.
been my,
Well, structure does have a definition later on.
yeah.
So, do you want to have principal structure here, or do you want to be structure, comma, principle?
When we do the definition for it, we'll go oh, I see right here, you have the next one down. Structure, comma, principle, I think. If you're gonna have multiple structure definitions, then it should say structure, comma, principle. You agree?
Yeah, just not, yeah.
So anything that's got, is a sub definition.
And principal use is probably okay, professional, well, what about professional office building? Does it even need to be there?
Or if you did, maybe you should go building professional office and be back under building.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that.
Does that make more sense? Because then when people are looking for building, it's like, oh, and
All
here's
the
this.
buildings are listed together.
Right, and it'd be hard for somebody to say, well, I couldn't find it, or I didn't know what it.
Yeah, no, I'll do that, I'll try to look for maybe a couple other examples of that too. Okay, well now that you're bringing that up, nursing home, home common nursing, I think nursing home stands alone.
I think it stands alone.
Okay,
It's
all
not
right.
using one of our other major words.
Yeah, just checking.
You can get a little foolish sometimes.
Oh, I know.
Give the state licensing for those, I mean, they're gonna do their homework. They're gonna do it. Right.
Okay, we're on, down to whip it through public utilities. You know, you had a regulatory floodway. Could you do me, who wants to take on looking at a regulatory floodway and compare it to those other flood definitions that we had?
Where are you at?
On page 1814,
Like,
this is what
which-
document you have. Do you want to double check that one, Bill?
There's no reference to,
I know, but we have floodway back in the earlier in the ordinance. All those floodway definitions.
Well, that's interesting.
yeah, it should be with the rest of it.
Yeah, we'll just go and just double check, and maybe it's already been included and we don't even need it. Okay, and you'll follow up with that,
And if we do need it, you'll go floodway regulatory.
or whatever. All right,
It may be one of those things that's included in that flood section, and there's nothing you can do except keep it.
right, we might have to. So now we're up to residents, okay, so now,
Can you get the screen down to residents?
And that's the definition that's been there forever.
Okay,
Well, why did we run the problems? It looks pretty straightforward.
It is, but now what you need to do is go with residence multifamily, residence two-family,
Yeah.
and basically pull the definitions out of the
Dwelling.
dwelling section. And then residence detached, or do we need to do that one? I think Eric can take a look at how he's gonna pull those all down.
So, having permanent indoor outdoor sink. Okay, so a structure intended as an occasional temporary living quarters such as a hunting cabin is not a residence.
That was what was agreed on long before it was ever on board.
Right, and that actually matches the state plumbing code too, so. Should we somehow combine residential dwelling unit into residence?
Yeah, why not?
You know, not quite clear why we would want to have two different ones.
Yeah, why don't you scratch it?
Yeah, my question, yeah, if it fits all right,
A
then
lot of
yes.
the things that it can't be are the same as what's in residence.
Well, either that or just call it residential unit. But do you need that?
No, I don't think you need it.
Well, dwelling unit back there almost the same, but not exactly. It kind of says.
Well, that's where we ended up with 2 or 3 different definitions.
Let's just get rid of that
basically, for a
one.
house.
Just take the big extra.
Because we're going to end up with all of those other definitions of dwelling under residence now anyway.
Right. See, you basically ended up with 3 different definitions for a single family
Yeah. I agree.
house.
Okay.
That whole rest of the page is okay.
Okay, I'm going to jump down to,
Okay, on the residential back lot,
yeah,
you ought to take out the word on the date of adopting
yeah.
of this ordinance. Because by the way it sounds there, is you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, that's what Bruce said before.
Yeah.
Can you go down to that on the screen, sorry?
That's on page, what, 1814?
1814.
So it's on those two.
So basically, you take out everything between the record and that.
Yeah. Great.
Where do you want to go next, Eric, how, beyond the shoreline stuff?
Well, I wanted to go down to
We
do.
get another flood reference on special flood hazard area.
Yeah, could you see whether that needs to go someplace else?
Okay, we need to address the static construction.
Okay. All right, what's the special flood hazard area, area, special flood, oh yeah, right, you're gonna, I don't even think that exists, okay, yeah, go ahead. Start construction. So, what do you wanna talk about?
How does it relate, or does it even relate to, how the date or timeline for a project?
Yeah. It identifies out the timeframe then, I mean,
Yeah. Okay, this is actual construction though, I guess it doesn't really maybe okay.
could we change the time.
And
when that-
static construction, I think, is used in some places. In the ordinance, I seem to remember us discussing.
The length of the permit so that we can keep people.
Say that again, Dave?
Well, once the permit's issued, then you've got to, you have to start breaking ground within 180 days, right?
Right.
Is there,
If it goes up a year, they can come back and
Yeah,
reapply.
we make it easier for them to make it longer if they need to.
Because of seasonality, you know, somebody comes in for permit in the winter time. 180 days, that's half a year, 6 months.
We made it pretty general. Yeah.
Street line. structure.
You know, structure, page.
1816. Might not be in that one.
Right there.
They don't include fencing. A pole as a structure.
Unless you want to add something to it, I think structure includes basically anything that's fixed, the way it's written.
Except for fences and poles.
And we're gonna take out satellite dishes out of there,
No, because you could have somebody want to do something where they've got some of the big dishes. And at that point there. And the little ones like like I've got the direct TV, those are just attached to a building, so they're not.
Well, no, they might be attached to a tree or a pole.
Yeah, mine is.
Yeah, actually mine's on a pole.
Let's say, you know what, I do think that Jerry has a good point. I think that satellite dishes, I mean, I think both of you have good points. I think he said satellite dishes over 30 inches in diameter.
yeah.
You want to go just a little bit bigger
Yeah.
because, yeah, you need to go, I think, 4 feet because your internet satellite dish, I think, is over 30 inches. In
Okay, that's what I was trying to think of.
Ovaltine, looks like an
Damn thing is
Ovaltine.
big.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So over 4 feet, and that would, and somebody wanted to put in a big telecommunications dish, okay, that would obviously be included as a structure, but if it's somebody's internet dish, it won't be. So if I said under 4 feet,
Yeah,
Over 4 feet if you want it included.
say that again.
If you want it over 4 feet, if it's gonna be included.
Oh yeah, over 4 feet, yeah, you're right.
To be included.
Yeah, you're right. Over 4 feet in any dimension. That's why I almost say diameter,
Yeah, then the whole.
yeah, over 4 feet in any dimension.
Well, the only problem with that is when you put it on poles, it would be over 4 feet high.
No, the actual dish itself.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, good enough. Of course, the other thing is, what's gonna happen when it comes to the structure?
Because we already have,
You have an exclusion for anything that's under 100 square feet.
well, we already have a exclusion on this for poles. So the only thing that they would put it on would be a pole or a
Right.
tree. And trees obviously aren't structures.
Right.
And then we said that they could put up a pole. So if somebody put up a utility pole with a satellite dish that was less than 4 feet in any dimension, they don't need to be covered by this.
Right. I just don't want people to get into a catch-22, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, I know. And I just want to make sure that people can do what they need to do, what everybody does in the modern world.
Yep.
Substantial completion, or substantially complete. Isn't that most homes in Clifton? It's usually the complete phase, it's 70%. You know, the tieback is on number one siding and.
We had an issue one time with throw some T111 up. Yep. Regular plywood is not an exterior finish, but T111 exterior finish.
I had a house in Anchorage, they use tons of brush.
What's up with that? Anyway.
Wouldn't think on it.
We good for that? We need to look at this other
Well, how
stuff.
about subsurface wastewater? Do we need a disposal system? We need to look at that?
That's a state definition, I believe.
Oh, okay, all right.
I don't think we can
There's
play with that one.
MRSA section.
Yeah, okay, that's right, we got it.
Now here, the adult entertainment stuff,
All right. That's, you added it on there, I don't have it.
Right. Have to go back to the,
What Eric handed out last week.
yeah,
yeah.
or no, I put it up, I posted it online.
Yeah, I didn't bother. with
That's
that.
where I
Yeah.
printed that, I should have printed extra copies. I
It's
thought
all right.
Debbie was gonna have a lot of stuff the other night.
No, I thought, she finally got me the right internet password, she got all her case messed up and everything else, but here we go.
Why did it change?
I don't know, they put the new network in.
They make it easier instead of
Oh, no, this is what-
35 characters?
This is more difficult, the 35 characters I can actually remember. So anyway, I mean, I think that this,
So you've added a whole standard here.
right, well, no, this was in Article 18, Article 14. And I think we had a discussion about taking anything that needed a definition out of Article 14 and putting it into Article 18.
Okay.
And we may, when we do other articles.
Find more things that need to get moved in, but instead of having definitions wherever they, sort of jumping out in an article, if there's something that needs to be defined, it needs to be in the definition section.
Yeah.
So anyway,
What we put in before.
right, this was already this is already verbatim what's already in there, it's just that it's in one place and not another place. So, and then the next one was the small wind energy systems.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I almost think we should go wind energy systems, comma, small.
It's already, that's the way it's already written.
I mean, when you alphabetize it,
No, yeah, right,
you see what I'm saying?
yeah. I'll think about that, yeah.